So my name's Austin. We're here at Hartfield and Company. Hartfield and Company was started in 2014. When we opened our doors in 2014, we became the first and only legal production of alcohol in Bourbon County since 1919. So a big thing for us is we're bringing bourbon back to Bourbon County. It's kind of our tagline, it's our slogan. We started when Jeremy Buchanan, the owner and CEO and master distiller, he started it with his brother in 2014, and they said, what happened to all the bourbon from Bourbon County? And what happened was Prohibition was enacted. Prior to Prohibition, there were about 26 distilleries that were operating inside of Bourbon County. Overnight, all of those shut down and none of them reopened. Big reason for that was the Bible Belt. Not a lot of people wanted alcohol here. The joke was up until about 15 years ago, I believe Bourbon County was a dry county. And the joke was you went to Christian County to get your alcohol. So fun little joke on that one. But our owner, Jeremy, he said, let's bring bourbon back to Bourbon County and let's do it the old-fashioned way and kind of bring those methods that the Scottish and Irish who settled this area were known for doing. So single batch distilling is a big thing about us. What we get off our still one time is what we get. We don't double batch distill where we're going to increase the quantity. We want to remain and have a quality spirit. And then we're going to use high malted barley content. High malt historically is what they used. Reason for that was kind of a jokingly way to put it is back in the day, the yeast strains were no different than grandma's sourdough bread starter. So you take a loaf of that, pop it in there, and you use higher malted barley content to aid in the fermentation process, drawing more sugar out of the corn. I'll get into that here in a minute. And then a big thing about us also is we're going to age in 6-gallon barrels. So we do 6-gallon barrels, 30 gallons, and 53s. And 6 gallons were kind of a historical thing that we kind of brought back and kind of revitalized. Two reasons for it. One, the history aspect. Two, when we started in 2014, we were down in a much smaller building on Main Street, and moving 6-gallon barrels up a small stairwell was a lot easier than 53-gallon barrels that were 500 pounds. So it was kind of out of necessity for that, and then still kind of maintaining that old way of doing things. So historically, the old way of doing it was small 6-gallon barrels because that's what they had. They were using it for flatboats that would kind of ride up from the port of New Orleans on our old Bourbon County box. We kind of have a picture of a flatboat fellow right there that you can take a look at. And so flatboats, what they were doing was they were coming up from the port of New Orleans and trading with the locals. The locals just happened to be the Scotch-Irish. Post-Revolutionary War, if you fought in the war, you got a parcel of land. If you grew anything on that land, you got to keep it. So ideally, you grew corn because corn grew exceptionally well in this area. And if the government came to say, hey, we want the land back, ideally you could say, hey, I grew stuff on this. It's mine now. And so corn liquor was pretty much it, 100% corn. And then they were starting to trade with others around the area, getting a little wheat, getting a little rye, getting whatever other things that they could get. Nobody really wrote anything down over 100 years ago. Like they're not keeping it like records like they are today. And so it might be, hey, we got 100 pounds of corn, 10 pounds of wheat, mix it, whatever the ingredients were at the time. And so these flatboats would come up and they would trade with the locals for the goods that were inside of their barrels for the whiskey that the locals were making. They would make that journey back down to the port of New Orleans where they found that those barrels aged much quicker. So everybody's kind of familiar with some instance of the story. And really, it was about an 8 to 10 month journey that they would ride those rivers back down where they would age much quicker. So due to the surface area contact in a smaller barrel, it'll age much quicker. So we do 12 months in a 6-gallon barrel. That is roughly the equivalent of 4 years in a 53 due to surface area contact. And because we do single batch distilling, that's what's going to allow us to have a good natural flavor as the finished product, which when he gets to try it, hopefully he'll relay that very well to you guys. So super excited about that, bringing bourbon back to Bourbon County. Fun little fact of where the word bourbon comes from. Are you familiar? Do you know where it comes from? Bourbon, the French House of Bourbon. It was a French dynasty, kind of like a royal family, the best way I can describe it. And a lot of French influence in Kentucky after the Revolution. They just started naming things around Kentucky, French names, as a nod to the French military who helped us win. So drive around for 5 minutes inside of Kentucky. you're going to see French sounding names, and it is linked to some sort of military advisor or French military family of some sort that's linked in that way. So here in Bourbon County, it was named after the French House of Bourbon. Fayette County is named after Lafayette, and then Paris here is named after Paris, France. So kind of inversely on that, then the port of New Orleans, they would take those 6-gallon barrels and they would trade them to bars and taverns locally. So there, those guys would take them and they would just put a spout in it or tap the barrels, and you would just drink straight from it. You'd carry around your own bottle. So mass production of bottling wasn't really a thing until the later 1800s. Prior to that, you carried around your own bottle, your own jug, with XXX written on the front of it or something like that. And so you'd go into a bar, you'd say, hey, I want whiskey, and ideally they'd say, where from? And you'd say, I'd like whiskey from Kentucky. And then they would say, Kentucky Corner's over there, and on the front of the barrels would be stamped what county, what state, and who made it. So if you think about it, it would say Bourbon County, Kentucky, and we'll say Hartfield family was the one who was making it. And then so you'd say, oh, I'll take that Bourbon County whiskey, to where people started loving it so much that it became colloquially slang all over to say, I want bourbon, to denote what whiskey from Kentucky that you wanted. And then this area of Bourbon County, as we know it today, was becoming known as Old Bourbon County. So it was originally a lot larger county as a whole. It was about 38 counties made up of back then that are now of today. And so they started breaking off. And as it was breaking off and becoming smaller and smaller counties, where we're at today of Bourbon County was known as Old Bourbon County. So this was where kind of the best stuff was being made. It was also where everybody was bringing their whiskey from around to trade at Stoner Creek, which is behind us. So if you go right there, there's some train tracks, and on the other side of the train tracks is Stoner Creek. And Stoner Creek was kind of the hub area where people were doing their trading. Little history of that. So we'll go look at our rick house, check out our mash tuns, and then we'll come back down here and I'll explain this bit. So this is our rick house. This is where everything ages. Our ricks are a little bit bare. We just did a 37 barrel pull today, this morning, and last week we did about a 30 barrel pull. So reason why it's looking a little bare is because of that, which is a good thing for us. It means our stuff's aging out, ready to get out there. That's what we're super excited about. So when it comes up here, we've got 6-gallon barrels, 30s on the floor, and 53s over here. So 6 gallons will age for 12 months. 30 gallons are going to age for a minimum of 2 years. When it hits 2 years, it gets straight bourbon whiskey title. We're in Kentucky, so it's called Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. So 2 years minimum on the 30 gallons, and then our 53s have a minimum of 4 years. So ideally, we want to get to the point where we're going to be aging them longer, but where we're at in the bourbon world and getting product out, 4 years is kind of the sweet spot that we're hitting. Also, with single batch distilling, we're going to have more natural flavor inside of that barrel, so we don't need to hit that 6-year mark just to get some flavor. We are not refining ethanol like some other places might be that need that time in the barrel. So once it comes up here, it's just going to sit. If you think of other rick houses that have barn style or tall, 5 to 7, however many tall style stories, the top floor is going to age faster than the bottom floor. Everybody calls the middle one the sweet spots. And so for us, we don't need to move things around. For other places, they're going to need to rotate those barrels on whatever determined time frame that they see. I'm not sure, but what I've heard is generally about 1.5 to 2 years. If you're trying to get 8 to 10 years on an age cycle, you're going to want to move those barrels around to get them time in the sweet spot and in those hotter and colder climates. So up here, everything ages, as you can see probably from the sweat on my brow. This building is very old. There's no central air, so it's quite warm up here at all times. When it gets into the winter, it's going to get quite cold. So we've got the train coming through. I'll let it go for a second. Just part of the flavor of the city. So Kentucky. It's Kentucky, exactly right. So when it comes up here, it's going to age. We get hot and we get cold. So when it's sitting up here in the heat, it's expanding. The barrel's going to swell a little bit, filling those cracks and crevices with the distillate. When it gets cold, it's going to shrink on itself, getting that distillate time to get on itself, developing those flavors. So more oak flavors it's going to get, more of those sugars it's going to bring out in the flavor, and the darker color it's going to get. More time it sits on itself, it's going to develop the kind of the sweeter citrusy notes and some lighter notes that you'll get off bourbon. So you want seasons on the barrel as it age, and up here it's going to get all of those seasons. So summertime, we're probably sitting around 88 to 90 something degrees. It'll get up to about 110 up here sometimes. Wintertime, it won't get below freezing, but it'll sit right there at 36, 35 degrees Fahrenheit. For he'll have to do the conversion for our European friends. But when it gets up here, we'll just bring it up and we'll just let it sit. So a neat little history of this building is this was originally a grain factory made in 1911 for all of the distilleries in Bourbon County. Prior or post 1919, when Prohibition was enacted, it gave up the ghost not too long after that, since bourbon was kind of the big thing around here. So it kind of went by the wayside. That in 1925, it became a Chevy car dealership. And so this area where we're standing right now is actually where they stored the cars. The second floor that we'll kind of go take another better look at was where they worked on the cars. It was the mechanic shop. And then the first floor was the showroom. So all of it was done by this grain elevator right here. We'll have a bit safer look at it on the second floor that we'll go look at. But this is how we move all of our grain up and all of our barrels up and down. And like I said, the barrels come up here and they'll sit. We don't have to rotate. We don't have to do anything for that. Any questions on aging? Perfect. They come up, they sit. Most all of these barrels are from Avon, Minnesota. They were one of the places that were selling to us during the barrel shortage of COVID. So that was kind of a no-brainer for us to get some barrels. Those 8 over there that look really old and dusty are our oldest barrels. We're in our 10-year anniversary right now. We're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary sometime in September or October. I'm not too sure yet, but we're going to be pulling those barrels in time for that. We're going to be having our 9-year-old barrel out there doing the bottles that we've got. So a pretty cool new line coming out from it. Any questions from you? Cool. We'll head over here. Here's our mash tuns in our grain area. So our mash tuns, they're not anything in particularly special. They're just repurposed drill press motors with fan blades on them. They're big totes. That's what they are. So open top. What we're going to do is fill them with 2,000 pounds of 185 degree water. We use flashpoint boilers behind it, those 3 machines over there. And what we're doing from there is heating them up. 170 to 185 is the ideal temperature to add corn to. 175 to 185, pardon me. When corn gets heated up, it's going to release its natural sugar starch. And what's going to happen is that is going to aid in the long format of fermenting by adding malted barley onto it. So when I get a... What's that?
Your mill is outside?
No, we get it shipped to us from Highlander Feed, and it comes milled already. So this comes from them.
Good, gotcha.
All of it. So this is corn. This is our rye right here.
Excellent, thank you.
And then malted barley right here. So this is our 2-row malted barley that we use for a pre-prohibition style mash bill. And what I'm going to do in the morning is do our 2 primary grains first, corn and rye, or corn and wheat, just depending on the mash bill. We're going to toss them in there first by hand using the bucket. I'm the guy who does all that. I'm the masher and the fermenter here. No previous real experience on that, just learning as we go. But I take that bucket, scoop it by hand, fill up each one. We're going to do anywhere between 12 to 1,400 pounds of grain a day for, between the 2. So in total, with both of those machines, while they're done, we'll be somewhere in there from the grain. And I'm going to let them sit till they get to the internal temperature of 155 degrees. So for this instance, corn and rye, let them sit. When it gets to 155, I can add my malted barley into it. So then I'll add malted barley. The reason for that is you don't want to recook your malted barley. It can give you stringent flavors. It can change off the entire pH. A lot of things that can happen. Just don't do it. Just wait till it hits the 155. Easiest way to do it. Once it hits that, I can add in the poundage, whatever the poundage is going to be per mash bill. And so grab the bag, however much of it is that it needs, and it goes in there. Malted barley has an enzyme in it called amylase. Amylase is also what's in your saliva. If you've never known that, whenever you eat something sweet and your mouth waters, that is your saliva using amylase to break down those complex carbohydrates and starches to turn it into sugar inside of your mouth. In the same way, when I add malted barley onto corn, it is breaking down the starch, giving us refined sugar, so that when I add yeast onto that, it gives us a ferment, which is going to be the yeast eating the sugar and giving us alcohol being created through the carbon dioxide.
Do you add any enzymes?
We don't. All of it just is going to come naturally from...
What is your mash bill? Is that secret?
No, it's not secret. So our pre-prohibition style is going to be 62% corn, 19% rye, 19% malted barley. And then our pre-prohibition wheated is 80% corn, 20% malted barley. And we've played around with a couple of the old Bourbon County, but it's either going to be 72% corn, 20% wheat, and 8% malted barley, or 70% corn, 20% wheat, 10% malted barley. So we've messed around with those in our experimental side, and both of them are really good. But we've been rolling with 72, 20, and 8. But we've got some 70, 20, 10 that may or may not be used. That one, you leave it, take it or leave it. Edit that out. I'm not too sure. That's a future thing that we've got to work on. But our bash bills, we're not keeping them a secret. It's just whether or not what we roll with. On that, but
Special yeast?
nope. Firm Solutions out of Danville, Kentucky. We'll use them, and if we what's that?
Dr. Pat Heise.
Yeah, Dr. Pat Heise. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We are the importer for him in Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Right on. Very cool. And then if we can't get a hold of them, or
just for the bourbon.
just for the
Not for Firm Solutions.
yeah, just for that. And if we can't get a hold of them, we've used Red Star yeast off of Amazon, just a distiller's yeast. But South Fork Malt House, which is where we get it. Oh, sorry there, Rye. That's Rye, the Rickhouse manager.
Yeah.
But South Fork Malt House is a guy out of Cynthiana, Kentucky. His name's RT Case, and he's pretty much a one-man show. I think he has 1 or 2 people helping him when they can, and he's producing some really good stuff. Some higher-ups were some people in the bourbon world were able to take some samples of it, and they said this guy's producing some of the best stuff. So we feel pretty fortunate and blessed to have RT on our side. And all of our grain comes from Highlander, and it's from local surrounding counties. All the counties, they get it from Touch. So I call it the Bourbon Cartel. They get all those grains together and bring them to us and supply some other bourbon places.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you ferment down below? Or
Yep, we're going to go take a look right at it. Neat thing about us is we're gravity. It's the old school way. Sir Isaac Newton invented gravity specifically for bourbon. Don't fact check me on that, just trust me. And so we've got that hose over here, and this hose is going to go straight through the floor, through just a hole in it, and I'm just going to plug it up to the front, open the valve, and let it flow straight down from there, and it's going to go right into our fermenters. So here is all of our stuff made, ready to go, ready to ship out, cased up. It'll just sit here till it gets bought. Here's Waylon Jennings. The bottle manager for that, keeps the mice away. But from here, it's just going to come in here, put on a pallet when it's all labeled, cased up, ready to go, and just sit till our distributor comes, picks it up, or we sell it to you over the counter. Over here, more stuff, bottles to be used, more stuff cased up, ready to sell. We have our fermenters going right here. Let me turn this off. We've got our fermenters going right here. So we've got 3 going. So if I say 3, it's really 6, but in my mind, this is 1 run. Right. So 2 upstairs, those 2 mash tuns will fill these 2 firm tanks, 1 and 1. And then these will go into the still and fill the still. So in my mind, this is 1 run. So
5 days?
5 days. We do 5 days. So if you want to come look, right here, you can get some videos. This is started of the 14th. Mm-hmm. This was done yesterday, 15th, so Thursday. And then this one was done Tuesday, the 13th. Yeah, it's going to be coming soon. And then so what I'm doing here is kind of show air is going to go to them. We're going to cool them down to 95 degrees.
Hey, you do a whirlpool, just like a
Yep, it's
jacuzzi.
just
I've never seen that
compressed
before.
air being pushed through it.
All right.
So we're going to be using these red and blue hoses.
Right.
Blue is cold water. If I've got a better look at it over, let's see. Nah, we moved them. Inside is just copper worm pushing cold water in, pulling hot water out. So cold water goes in, hot water gets pulled out, and we're going to use compressed air to start cooling it down. We cool it to 95 degrees. That's the ideal temperature for us to add yeast to it because it keeps it within a 9 to 5 work day. So we could, 85 to 95 is good range to add it. Anything below 70 can be too cold and you can risk it falling asleep. But anything over 100, you can risk cooking it and losing it. So 95 just keeps it in a regular work day so that I'm not here till like 8 p.m. on hot days. And that's what we're going to do, just cool it down, compressed air pushing through, cold water going into it. And then when it cools down, pitch our yeast into it, let it sit for those 5 days. And then I'm going to take measurements each day. So temperature, gravity, and pH. So all of them going to have temperature. Gravity is the projected yield of alcohol that's being created. So I want to see the numbers start high and end low. I haven't done it for today. I'll be doing that a little bit later. And all that's doing is we're going to put those numbers into a computer. Computer's going to spit back out and say you've created X amount of alcohol. So right now this is called distiller's beer, kind of colloquially or in the biz kind of known, because there's no difference at this moment between beer and whiskey. So beer is going to be boiled, whiskey will be distilled. So we're capturing the alcohol vapor that's being created to make whiskey, whereas beer you'll just boil it and separate the ingredients from that way. And so pH, the other thing is the natural acidity that occurs inside of it. We don't do anything to adjust any of these things. Once it goes in here, once we pitch our yeast in, we just let it sit, and then we'll add cooling to it if it needs it. That's why that fan over there was going, just to kind of keep it in from getting up above 100. We just let it sit for those 5 days. 5th day, we've opened up the valves on the front and just let it flow straight down.
Okay. Now, would this be considered a sweet mash process then?
We are a sweet mash, yes. So we start fresh yeast every time. Yep. And so
No setback.
nope, no setback. This machine right here is our LSS machine. Normally there's a giant tote underneath, and then that tote is going to get the spit grain, and the spit grain is just going to go to a local farmer. He's actually coming in the next hour or so to pick up the spit grain, and he's going to give it to his cows, chickens, all the barnyard animals. What that's going to do is just give us wort, so we're grain out fermentation, sweet mash, and we don't do anything to backset it. Pardon me, or anything like that. We just LSS liquid solid separator.
That's why that's basically your lauter. You lauter with that. You separate.
Yeah, it's like a giant wire brush that's going to be spitting that grain out. Yep.
Okay, so you don't distill on grain.
Nope. Okay. We have a few experimental stuff that we messed around with. For us, it's a unique flavor enough because we've been doing grain out this entire time since the beginning, and so we messed around with it. And it's a unique enough flavor, but it's not the same to where it's like, oh, we could just go into that. So we probably won't do it, but we've got, I don't even know how many, maybe 10 barrels of experimental stuff. But being that we use those small barrels, we also get to play around with stuff. So it allows us to know within that 8 to 10 month range, hey, this is something good. Make this mash bill into larger products and to put it in a single barrel or something like that. Or it's like, hey, this was good. It was a fun experiment we did. Release it under the experimental line.
Now, I've never seen anyone do the air bubbling before.
Okay.
Is that your own idea, or where did that come from?
I'm not too sure on that one. It was mostly a thing of when you add yeast to it, what we're going to do is pull out about 7 cups worth, put the yeast in there, let it mix for 30 minutes or sit, and then that's kind of a jump start. We call them yeast bombs. And then putting air into it allows it to be moving all around. and kind of getting.
So you have no circulation. You don't have a blade in there turning. And
Nope,
so on.
nope. Just sits. It's PEX tube like you see up here, and it just sits down at the bottom, and we drilled little holes in it.
Very ingenious. Love it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's one of those we call it, the redneck science behind some things.
You MacGyvered it.
Yeah, MacGyvered it. That's exactly right. We're making things work. We don't any of us really have a background in this stuff, so we're learning. I'm learning. I've been here for almost 2 years, so I'm learning from what they've learned and from what they know, and we're all just learning together. But hopefully, have you had our stuff before? I'm
It's not
excited.
available in Europe.
I understand. I understand.
I change that one day.
Hey,
Together
if you're the guy, you're the guy. You're the guy. I'll make sure that card gets to the chief. Any questions?
No.
Cool. 5th day, we just open up the valves on the front and let it flow straight down into our still, which we'll go look at. So here, this is our bottling and labeling plant. Best way to describe it, jokingly, affectionately calling it that. What's going to happen is we've got a giant tote of alcohol right here. If you want to come over here, you can get a look. That has our H&C 1, which is our pre-prohibition Kentucky bourbon whiskey in it, and hose is going to go inside of it. 4 bottles will be put up. Hit start, fills the 4 bottles. Every bottle is going to be hand-filled, hand-corked, and then the anti-tamper device will be put on top of it, this black label. All by hand. Somebody here, there's only 5 of us who work. 1 to 2 of us may be working up in here at a given time. Sometimes it might just be one of us. And, it's not uncommon to see even the boss coming out here taking phone calls and filling up bottles. It's go, go, go when it's bottling time. So you're going to fill up the bottles, fill up the table. The next person putting those anti-tamper devices on. If it is not one of those 750s that is this size, this will have a machine that will label it for us, and then everything else is going to be hand labeled right here. This is a gin bottle, but it'll be put on here. You put the front label on, you rotate it over, put the back label on. So by hand, it's going to be one, if not all of us, has touched every bottle in some way. We take a lot of pride in it because being that there's only 5 of us, we all do everything. So we all have kind of a keen insight into saying, I bottle, I label, distill, mash, ferment, give tours, give tastings. We're all doing something to help each other out. So whereas other plants are so big, somebody's entire shift might just be bottling or in the front room. Here, you you could be carrying some grain upstairs with us or something like that. So everybody gets to have some sort of combined experience on that, which is one thing that I take a lot of pride in, being that I'm involved in the first drop of water to when I hand it over to you at every step of the way from top to bottom, those barrels being filled, those barrels being dumped to being bottled, labeled, everything. At some point, I've touched that process to hand it over to somebody across the counter.
Briefly mention your water. Is it just city water?
It's so all of Kentucky sits on limestone reserve. All Kentucky water is limestone. We get it from Stoner Creek, which is city water, and so all of that process is done through them. It's just simpler for us rather than having to go and do another process. It's all done osmosis, reverse osmosis, already through the city. So here's our still. This is a 500-gallon hybrid reflex column pot still. Pot still on the bottom with a column on top. So what's going to happen is the ferments from upstairs that we looked at are going to come down into here. We're going to fill it up. It's going to give us X amount of however much that we made. Whatever it is to get to 500, we're going to just top off with water. It's usually just going to be a few gallons on top of that. And what we're going to do from there is turn on our boiler system. Boiler's going to shoot hot steam across. You can see it coming out of that little room across and then down here to the arm behind it. That hot steam is going to heat up the pot still, and that pot still is then going to start getting to 190 degrees, releasing the alcohol vapor. Alcohol vapor is going to travel up through the sight glasses. So if you've ever been to any other distillery or seen other ones, the taller the column is, the more alcohol that you're producing. But it's stripping natural flavor as that vapor travels up. So we have a hybrid by being pot still with a column on top. That column is going to give us a little bit extra bump in our overall yield, but we're still maintaining a quality spirit right off our still, something that we're very proud of. So that top hat portion, I call it the top hat portion, but it is called a deflamator. It's a cold water cap. It's a Scottish word, and it's spelled deflegamator. So if you ever see it spelled, it's pretty funny. But the cold water cap. Well, say that again.
German, deflegamator.
Deflegamator. Well, that's a good one to know. I'm going to lock that one in. Deflegamator. So cold water being pushed down. Reflux, think acid reflux in your stomach. It is bubbling, toiling away here of the wort and the mash that's going. So it's bubbling, and we want it to bubble up into the column and heat up and sprout into there, causing it to scorch. So cold water gets pushed down, and that keeps it from bubbling up and over. The alcohol, being lighter, is going to travel up across the jacket arm and then down here. So this area right here is the cooling condenser. This is just cold water being flushed around inside of here. So what's going to happen? Hillbilly Stills. Yeah.
Good.
Where are they out of, Tyler? Hillbilly Stills? Murray, Kentucky, Hillbilly Stills. So they made this entire setup for us. Very thankful for that. But what's going to happen here is think hot front meets cold front, like a rainstorm. That vapor is turning back into a liquid right here, and it's just going to flow from the parrot right here. So it's a vapor back into a liquid from the cold water, and it's just going to flow up and over. We're going to use a hydrometer inside of there, which is going to measure the alcohol content being created, and we separate heads, hearts, and tails. Heads, first bit of alcohol that comes off, if you don't know, not usable, not drinkable. We use it for cleaning out all the hoses and pipes that you've seen along the way. It's going to be over 160 proof generally, but we're going to run it from heads. It's going to get roughly about 1 gallon to 2 gallons, somewhere between here is where we're going to run it, and we're just looking for flavor change. We want to kind of start dabbing on it off the parrot to see when it starts turning to what I call a peanut butter sandwich. You're getting that nuttiness, you're getting that yeastiness. That's a good flavor that you want to get. So I'm going to run it from there. When it gets below 160, so legally it can't come off the still higher than 160 to be bourbon. So when it gets below 160 or 160 and below, when it starts tasting good, generally around the 145, 150 mark, that's when we'll cut to hearts. Hearts is our overall production run. This is what's going to end up in a barrel. And we're going to run that to 117 proof. So once it hits 117 overall batch, we cut to tails. Tails is the last bit of alcohol being squeezed out. I affectionately call it a supercharged White Claw. It's anywhere between 60 and 80 proof. It's water, it's oil, it's floral. It's still alcohol, but it's not a flavor that we want to affect our overall hearts run. So we'll take that hearts run anywhere between 35 to 45 gallons. Is generally where we live. We've gotten more, we've gotten less. Great days is more than 45, bad days is below 35. So we're going to get somewhere inside of there. We'll take it and we'll put it in a tote. So we've got 3065 over there that it can go in, or if you take a look over here, Tyler's actually barreling our run. So, pardon me. So we'll take that. If we do the same mash bill, say in a month, that's what we'll do for that whole month, and we'll take at the end, look at how many gallons we've created. So if we do 3 days a week of running for a whole month, and I'm making this number up, but say we get like 185 gallons, we see from there, okay, how many 53s do we want to do versus how many 6 gallons? Do we want to do all 53s? Whatever it's going to be. So that's the hearts runs, and then the tails we're going to take and redistill. So that's all of our tails right there collected. We'll redistill it, and we turn it into a experimental moonshine right now. So we've got over there in that tote 3065 on the floor. That one has our experimental moonshine. It's like 152 proof. So this is our experimental barrel. This came out of France. It is an open-end head and back bung. So this is clear. When this was filled May 2nd of this year, it went in clear. It was a clear white whiskey that went in, and this is taking on the natural color. So we call this our active aging barrel. We want to see when color starts happening. When we filled this, it was in 3 days. It took on a light tinge yellow, and then it started turning into a honey color. After about a month, it maintained this really nice dark honey. And then after about a month and a half, it turned into this amber color and kept getting darker. So up until about 4 weeks ago, you could still see through this. Now I'm going to step around behind the back, and you can't really see anything through it. I'm waving at you. So you can kind of see. Closer you are to it, you might be able to. That's a good opener for it. Yeah, almost. And so we just filled this up. It's not anything we're necessarily going to be selling or sampling out of. It's mostly of when you come here and take a tour with us, this is going to be changing. So we want to see when evaporation loss starts happening. We want to see color change. We want to see all that. Every year we'll be pulling a sample, ideally just to see how it's aging next to a standard barrel. So that's what we're going to be doing. So it's just kind of a fun one-off thing that I think we're the only, I'm not saying we are the only ones, but right now I think we're the only ones. So it might be something cool that we start and other people might be doing, so you can always just kind of see kind of how the different reaction that happens inside of there. But this is a charred barrel. It's a normal barrel aside from the head and back bung being off of it. So it's lost 25% roughly surface area of aging. So we don't know what this is going to do open, being exposed to light or anything like that. But it's more so of just a fun thing that you can come in and take a look at. Excellent. Yes. Okay. So we're going to roll down the line. Mm-hmm. Each one of these lines up with what you're about to have. Make sure you're rolling.
That's not bad, to be honest.
You know, Hartfield and rum, it works as a tripod too. So we'll get started right here. We're going to do white whiskey. So our white whiskey is 62% corn, 19% rye, 19% malted barley.
Would be the same as this.
Exactly right. So this is what comes right off our still. Yeah. This is what other places are going to call white dog, white lightning, moonshine, something gimmicky like that. Most places will tell you, hey, it's not very good. We just want to show you what our high wine tastes like, whatever it is that they're going to be calling it. This is, in our opinion, how booze was made 100 years ago. It's kind of from not necessarily a specific recipe that we found, but just kind of something neat that we looked into and kind of researched and found some things. I gotta, if you wanna. That we researched and found some things. So this is how white whiskey was whiskey hundreds of years ago, how the regular person was drinking off of it, because nobody was really aging if you were a blue collar person running off your still. So 100 proof, 62 corn, 19% rye, 19% malted barley. Mm-hmm. Corn sweetness, over the tongue, little rice spice that kind of sits on the edge, and then back to more corn sweetness. We kind of stand by it. We think this is great on its own. My favorite way to do this is I'm gonna drink it with lemonade, mix it with something already kind of sweet, and it mixes really well. Ginger ale is great too. My favorite, sweet tea and lemonade. Okay. So that's what I'm.
Total cost?
$20.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had a little bit from the White Dog from Buffalo Trace.
Mm-hmm.
$58 for this bottle over in Europe. It's it's all $20 here as well, but it's just by the time you over there, go through 7 different people.
All of the customs, all of it, and so for us, we just wanted to have a quality spirit right off our still. We want those grains to taste. We don't want to distill those flavors out. We want to maintain that corn forward sweetness. So. That's what we do right off the still. We run it to that 117 proof it down to 100, and then what we're going to do is put it in a barrel for 12 months and age it. So that barrel is going to be a 6-gallon barrel that you've seen upstairs aging. Same mash bill, 62 corn, 19 rye, 19% malted barley.
That's 2 years?
This is 12 months.
12 months.
12 months.
That's so amazing what you did 12 months for that little barrel. Then you said the wood is from Minnesota?
Exactly right. Avon, Minnesota, out of the barrel mill.
All right. Yeah, the grain is much tighter up there than it is Kentucky, so that makes our Missouri or wherever else you do wood.
When they pull them, they'll pull them from the colder climates, and so pulling it then, it actually retains more sugar inside of the oak, particularly the sap up there, and the winters will stay a lot tighter up there. So there's even more of like a nice mellower sweetness that can kind of come out.
And this retails are here?
$50. right out of the door. Yeah. 53 with tax.
Okay.
It's yours.
All right.
Taking it overseas might be a little tough for it.
Something else, that's not my problem. But
yeah.
Okay.
Number 3 is our wheated pre-prohibition bourbon, 80% corn, 20% malted wheat. So we've foregone malted barley to add in a malted wheat. This is going to give a more unique flavor profile. So with most wheateds, you're going to get more citrusy caramel notes out of it. I get baking spice notes off of this one. Off of the nose, it's very like fall sweetness, cinnamon, baking spice notes. A little bit of marshmallow vanilla with a little bit of like campfire smoke. So that oak takes on, from a smokiness, it takes on like a campfire smokiness with a little bit of marshmallow in there.
Did you get enough enzymes from the malted wheat?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not expect that.
Yeah, well, I didn't either. When I first did this mash bill, I was like
70-30 or what was
80-20.
Even with
20% malted wheat.
Malted wheat doesn't have that much. All right, well, okay.
Yeah.
Very
and that's a big help from South Fork, RT Case at South Fork. He's knowing what he's doing. 6-gallon barrels for 12 months. Yep.
12 months as well.
Yep, 100 proof. So these two are 100 proof. This is my favorite winter time. So I can imagine getting pretty chilly over there in Germany. This is what I'd reach for if I was over there. Tailgating for a soccer game if you guys do that. Here, football's a big thing.
Yeah.
This is my fall time. This is what I reach for.
Definitely a little bit of that, more of the caramel moment here. Ooh, like that. Also 50 or more?
50. Yep, so 20,
50.
50, 50.
Okay.
And then last one, Old Bourbon County. This is our modern mash bill. Modern mash bill is going to be 72 corn, 20% wheat, 8% malted barley, but it's going to be in the 53-gallon barrels, aged for a minimum of 4 years. With this, we do 6 barrel pulls at a time. 5 barrels are going to be put into the batch, and then 1 barrel is going to be picked out to be the single barrel, left at cask strength. We do this to 110 proof for the overall batch blend. And we wanted a bottle that you can see here represents Kentucky. Take a look at it, and you can say, "Oh, that's probably what Kentucky looks like."
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That was actually the picture of the guy here.
Yep, from up there. Yep, that was just a blown-up version of it. This one's my favorite, my go-to for sipping neat. I go to this one. I might do a couple drops of water in it. Even, heck, putting an ice cube in it at 110 proof, you've got a lot of body for it to play around with and kind of allow flavors to bloom coming off of it. So
you said you had some barrels there. They're going to be for the 9th or 10th year anniversary.
Yeah, 10th year anniversary. Those are older mash bills. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what they are. I haven't asked them when they brought them out.
More or less 4 years of age, or are you going to go
for 53s? Right now, we're doing 4 years. Okay. When we can up our production, we want to add more time onto that. But where we're in bourbon world, as you're aware, we want to hit that 4-year mark to put product out. But we want to get to the point where we're making money off the product to buy more grains, to make more stuff, so that then we can set stuff back and get more and more onto it. But right now, the 4 years is a sweet spot for us. We want to set at least 1 barrel back to get, maybe 6 years on, see if that's a viable option, and find that, the 5, the 6, the 8 year on that barrel to see what it's going to be doing.
Also single barrels for those.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay. I think the wheated is actually my favorite.
I love all of this stuff. It's when I first started here, just in my interview process, I bought a bottle of this just to take home. I was like, maybe it'll look good when I interview. I know I kind of already know the boss man, but I'm gonna take it home, and I drank it down right to the top of the line because I was like, this is really good. Because you don't want to work at a place that you're like, is this gonna be good? Like, how do I talk about this stuff and be like, it's a really good 4-year-old bourbon? Trust me, I really do believe in our product. I think it's good. The batch that I've made is going to be ready in 3.5 years or a little less. So I'm excited about my Old Bourbon County stuff. This stuff that I've made, this is next batch is the stuff that I've made. So it's something I take pride in, that I'm saying this is what I've made. I'm handing over to you, along with Tyler. Me and him are distilling and making the stuff. So being that there's only 5 of us, like I said, we're all doing everything. But
the price here?
$65.
Okay. 65.
It's 68 out the door, I believe. So we try to stay in a affordable range. In terms of the other crafts, we're kind of in the lower end on our prices. but it allows more people to buy our stuff. We don't want to charge so much that we almost price ourselves into oblivion. We want to be able to maintain, get it out there and people to look at it and be like, yeah, maybe I will pick this up. So the Hartfield name, the distillery that we are, it dates back to Jeremy Buchanan's grandfather, I believe great-grandfather, somewhere in the time of 1860 in Greene County, Kentucky. And so this was a sketch of the original Hartfield distillery in Greene County, Kentucky. We were not able to get the same distillery number as them. Things were different back then, but we revitalized it in its own current DSP that we have today. But it's just something cool that we do have a connection, that this original distillery was started by our current owner's ancestor, and it was Isaac and Leopold Hartfield who started it. And from what we found, I believe Isaac was the tinsmith and coppersmith, and Leopold was the grain and distiller for it. So something kind of cool, neat little history that we have as a piece of connection to the old ways of making things as well. So our Franken whiskey is typically what does not fit into a barrel, and we'll just blend it together. So it could be, a half gallon of our wheated, 2 gallons of our bourbon whiskey rye, whatever. If we're making something and it doesn't fit into a barrel, we're going to blend them together. This one's pretty unique because it's 5 barrels of 7 different mash bills. So it has some of our experimental grain-in mixed barrels. It has a couple of old Bourbon County barrels and a couple of our pre-Prohibition bourbon whiskey barrels in them. And so what we did was created this blend, but one of the offshoot barrels that's inside of it is our moonshine that I mentioned, all the tails redistilled. The tails have 2 gallons of gin inside of it that's redistilled, giving it a super unique, weird lifting green tea flavor note to it. So if you want to just smell it, or if you even want to taste it, I'll let you try it. So the first little bit is going to have this herbally green tea note to it, and then the back end is going to start tasting like whiskey. It's weird. It's unique. It's something that we do every October 31st. We're going to release a different one, and it's going to possibly, most likely, be different than the last one. We're constantly just changing and putting stuff in there. If you want to get a close-up on this bottle, this was done by Tony Moore, who is the guy who did the Walking Dead comic books. He drew them, and he did some of Marvel stuff as a comic drawer for them. And he partnered with us. We partnered with him. And he did this label for us. So something kind of cool and unique, a one-off thing that you can only get inside of our distillery right now, that when people come in, it's a great talking point to have on your shelf. Something unique. Yeah, so when you come in, you'll roll right over here. You can look at all of our offerings. We've got our pre-Prohibition line right here. So this is our bourbon whiskey that's number 2 on the flight that you had. Here's number 3 on the flight, our wheated bourbon. Our exceptional barrel is going to be the single barrel based off of whatever pre-Prohibition line that we have out. So this happens to be our wheated one. It's going to be at cash strength. This is 114.5 proof. So it's just one of those 6-gallon barrels pulled, left at cash strength. Watch behind you. And then we've got our experimental line that we'll do, our white whiskey, the Franken whiskey. This bourbon whiskey is just a 375 based off of our pre-Prohibition flight. We, of course, got to have an entire shelf to our awesome old Bourbon County recipe. Beautiful bottle. Our white label is going to be the single barrel, and our blue is going to be our batch. So this is 120 proof for our single barrel, and our batch overall is 110. We've got over here, here's our commemorative, our first barrel box. So it's going to come in one of these commemorative oak boxes, and inside of that is going to be our first single barrel of Old Bourbon County that we laid down. It's going to have a commemorative bung and a cool rocks glass that comes with it. We've got maple syrup, gin, and then our whiskey. So it's the same mash bill as number 2 on the flight, our Kentucky bourbon whiskey, but we just put in a used barrel. A very kind of unique cherry cola flavor that comes off of it. Then we have our white rums and our aged rum. And then this Wild Wolf is a contract run that we do for a guy named Ron Blair. Ron Wolford Blair wrote a book about his ancestor, who was Colonel Frank Wolford. and he was in the Civil War, the American Civil War. He was a Union general. He did the research on him, wanted to do a book. He wrote the book on it and wanted a bourbon to be paired with his book. And then, of course, we've got all of our glassware right here, things, coffee beans that are aged, some cool Bourbon County books, our hats and other items that you can come in and purchase.
Okay, very good. Where can we find you online?
Hartfield and Company. We've got a little thing over here you can get a better close-up on. But here, Hartfield and Company, www. If you search Hartfield and Co. On Google, that'll pop up. It's going to give you all the information. We do tours every hour on the hour. Tuesday to Saturday, we are open 9 to 5. So 4 o'clock is going to be the last tour time that you can hop in there. We do tastings at any point during the day. Walk-ins are welcome. Hop on in. And we'd like to have you already on a tasting or something within the 5 minutes of you being there. But if you show up for a tour, you can come in 10 minutes beforehand and you'll get hopping on that next hour tour. And then Mondays, we're open 1 to 5, 1 being the first time for tours. There's a lot less people working on Monday. But come on in. We want to have you and come experience bourbon from Bourbon County.
Thank you very much.